Baby, not so fast. You know mom can't keep up with you. As Lee continues to pull their mother toward the hallway, Jungkook swallows hard. The seconds tick by, each one amplifying the thud of his heart. And then, there she is, stepping into the archway. Lee, please, don't pull so hard. The woman begins, her expression shifting from mild annoyance to utter astonishment as she lifts her eyes and freezes. Jungkook stands there, caught between a smile and a lump forming in his throat. His mother blinks, and for a moment, the world seems to pause. Jungkook? Jungkook, is that you? Her voice trembles with disbelief, and she shakes her head, as if trying to dispel the illusion standing in front of her. But Jungkook only steps back from his younger sister, who had been clinging to his side all this time, and adjusts the bouquet of flowers in his hand as he approaches his mother. Hey, mommy, he can't contain himself, and laughter escapes his lips along with a relieved exhale. I've missed you so much. Jungkook buries his face between her neck and shoulder, taking in a deep breath of the familiar scent he hasn't experienced in so long. Mama. She smells like home and his childhood. She smells like love, safety, and warmth, feelings Jungkook hasn't felt since he left home last time. Oh my god, baby, she sobs, hugging him even tighter, and Jungkook readily surrenders to it. And you didn't even warn me that you were coming? I can't believe it, he laughs, soothingly running his hand down her back, then pulls away to look into his mother's eyes, gently wiping away tears from her cheeks. Just thought it would be nice to spend the holidays with you guys. What do you think? A mischievous smile plays on his lips, and Jungkook sees his mom take a deep breath, shaking her head. You haven't changed, Jungkook. New York. Waking up in the apartment without Jungkook turned out to be surprisingly unfamiliar, considering how little time he actually spent here. With such thoughts, Taehyung got out of bed this morning. Then he had breakfast alone. And then, with annoyance, he threw Jungkook's blue tracksuit into the laundry basket, just so he wouldn't have to see it anymore and think about how far away his boy is now. As if letting Jungkook go is the most wrong thing he could ever do. That's why, after sending Jungkook a restrained birthday message late in the morning, Taehyung quickly gets ready and leaves for his office. Because staying in this apartment, where the pillow on the other side of the bed where Jungkook slept still holds the shape of his head, where Jungkook's knickknacks here and there occupy the surface of the bedside table or the bathroom shelf, where his silly backpack is still by the bed, staying in the apartment where thoughts of Jungkook surround him at every corner turns out to be unbearable. He doesn't miss him. He doesn't miss him. Well, at least, he convinces himself of that. But how the hell can he miss Jungkook, whom he himself took to the airport just yesterday? How can he miss Jungkook, whose existence he didn't even know about a few months ago? Taehyung exhales loudly, putting aside another sheet from the list of documents he's reviewing, and covers his eyes. He rubs his temples with his fingers, trying to ease the headache, and thinks about where he can spend this evening. Going back to the empty apartment sounds like a punishment to himself, and going to the moth is a pointless decision, considering that the only reason to go there now is somewhere deep in the state of Michigan and probably doesn't even think about him. So the idea of having dinner with his wife crosses Taehyung's mind, and maybe discussing their plans for tomorrow's Christmas. Taehyung even considers texting her and, at the same time, asking his secretary to book a table for them at one of the Taehyung favorite restaurants. But as soon as he thinks about it, the sound of heavy doors slamming and the loud clack of high heels reaches his ears. Mr. Kim Taehyung, his wife's voice slices through the air in the expansive office, but Taehyung remains with closed eyes and fingers pressed against his temples. What the hell? The sound of a slap reaches him, and he shifts his gaze to the desk where a large, pale yellow envelope now rests. What is this? He asks wearily, finally lifting his eyes to meet his wife's gaze. Mrs. Kim is in front of his desk, her anger unmistakable. What is this? Open it and find out. Unperturbed by her emotions, Taehyung nonchalantly picks up the envelope and begins to open it. He extracts its contents and examines the photographs within. A tight knot forms in his throat as he sifts through images of him and Jungkook, candids from the park, the airport, and that particular evening when he fetched Jungkook from his apartment and settled him into his car. I'll ask again, Taehyung scowls, his jaw clenching. What the hell is this? Mrs. Kim, dropping her handbag on the edge of his desk, maintains a stoic silence, arms folded across her chest. Taehyung, unimpressed, tosses the envelope and photos back onto the desk, rising to his feet. Did you hire someone to spy on me? Turning into one of those pitiful partners' wives, going mad with jealousy for no reason. Watch your mouth, the woman hisses, then sighs with irritation. Like I have nothing else to do than to keep an eye on you and your questionable activities. Then what is this? What is this? Do you want to know, dear? She tosses a business card in front of him, and one glance at the all-too-familiar logo is enough to understand everything. These arrived at my office today with a note. Seems our competitors have decided to play dirty. Taehyung scowls even deeper, studying the card with narrowed eyes. The tension in the room thickens as the weight of the situation sinks in. Dirty how? Mrs. Kim leans against the desk, her expression unreadable. Blackmail, Taehyung. They've got photographs, and they are not afraid to use them. This is war. So the man scoffs. You act as if you're a greenhorn in the business, Mrs. Kim. Falling for some idiotic blackmail and murky compromising material on the threshold of such a big deal, she bursts out, unable to restrain herself, making Taehyung visibly tense. Yes, I decided to do so. But more importantly, why didn't you decide against it? Knowing what's at stake, how could you be so careless? You're behaving like a teenager, Kim. Hand-holding? Airport kisses? What's next? A romantic getaway to Paris for Valentine's Day? Stop it. My personal life is none of your business. Oh, believe me, it is very much my business. For some reason, I have to safeguard our family's reputation and name alone while you frolic with your little pet. Watch your mouth, Taehyung growls again. I've warned you, I warned you too. And I see no reason to repeat it. I don't need our competitors coming to me with such photos, hinting that I should influence you in the deal just to keep this mess from going public. Taehyung clenches his jaw, his gaze unwavering on his wife. Influence? A cold laugh escapes the man's lips. Then why show me these photos? Why bring up blackmail? Mrs. Kim approaches slowly, like a predator preparing to strike. The echoing clicks of her heels on the marble floor resound loudly. Because I know that there's only one way to influence you now, she says, and Taehyung squints, closely watching as her slender finger taps lightly on one of the photos, right where Jungkook is depicted. No way, Taehyung thinks. Just dare, he hisses, with a hint of anger, pushing her hand away from the photos. Just dare to touch him, Mrs. Kim, and you what? She snarls, not even bothering to listen. You what, Taehyung? Will you get rid of me like you got rid of that mistake living next to your little pet? Taehyung exhales heavily, tightly running his hand through his hair, and moves towards the window to turn away from his wife for just a moment. Go on, tell me, mockery rings in her voice. This is how you're solving problems now, huh? Stop it, he snubs, continuing to gaze out of the window at the city far below. You ask questions as if you didn't know all the answers long before you entered my office. Of course I knew them. She shakes her head, disappointment in her eyes as she looks at her husband turned away from her. But I want you to say it out loud and think about what a foolish mistake you've made, meddling your hands where it wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth it, Taehyung grimaces, glancing back at her over his shoulder. Attacked Jungkook multiple times, Mrs. Kim. And he didn't heed my warning the last time, so I did what I promised. I couldn't care less, darling, about what that piece of crap did to your plaything, understand? It's not a substantial reason to risk and dirty your hands like this. I'll dirty my hands where I want to, Mrs. Kim. And if someone dared to think they could harm my Jungkook and get away with it, your Jungkook, she lets out a sarcastic laugh. You're out of line. Don't attribute such importance to temporary amusements and sexual services you buy from them. Or are you going to risk everything for every— Shut up, Taehyung growls, abruptly turning and pointing at her with his finger. Dare to call him that again, Mrs. Kim, and I swear, you'll regret it. But she only sneers, pushing his hand away with undisguised disdain.